Good evening. Today is Tuesday, June 22nd. It is 6:30. We have a full dais, and I am calling this meeting to order. The City of Bastrop reserves the right to reconvene, recess, or realign the regular session or called executive session or order of business at any time prior to adjournment. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll please stand, we'll say the pledge to both flags. If you would please remain standing, our invocation will be given by Deacon Paul Cook, who is from Ascension Catholic Church, and we're honored to have him with us this evening. Deacon Cook?
Mayor Schroeder and council members, since this is my first time to do an invocation, I'd like to give you a little introduction. I was ordained 10 years ago and have been serving at Ascension Church for the past 5 years. My wife and I, we moved here from Baltimore and to be close to my son and Kyle, who has 5 children, and my daughter in Maynard, who has 6 children. As I tell people, you have to go where the numbers are. My wife Susan and I would like to thank all of you for serving on the council and making Bastrop a wonderful place to live. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of life, especially of Mayor Schroeder and all who serve on the council. We thank you for the many people who work hard every day to make Bastrop a safe and supportive place for families and those who work in or travel to our city. We also thank you for all our first responders who commit their lives every day to keeping our community safe. We ask your blessings on the meeting this evening. May everyone here have the courage to share their thoughts. May they seek to listen and understand the viewpoints of others. And may they have your holy wisdom to make good decisions for the common good of all, most especially the poor and the homeless. And we ask this through your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you.
You may be seated. Thank you so much, Deacon Cook. You and your wife have a wonderful dinner this evening. He told me he was headed home. All right, Council, we are going to move forward with my mayor's report. And Colin, I have just a couple of things before we get started. We had just a fantastic time on Saturday with our Summer in the City and our Juneteenth celebration. Just a really great time. It was a little bit warm, but thankfully there was cold drinks around, and the Connect the Four and Touch the Truck, and I'm sure that you've seen some of the pictures online, and just really hats off. It takes a lot of people to pull something like that off. We had a lot of volunteers and a lot of city staff, and so thankful to them for providing that great time for the whole community. And then one of the things that I have the privilege of as being mayor is sometimes I get kudos for our employees that not everyone has access to. And they work really hard, and things don't always go perfect, and we find ourselves, it's a lot easier to complain than it is to give kudos. And I wanted to give some shout outs to some of our employees. With BP&L, Bubba, and you guys will remember I was going to do this on June 8th. You remember that crazy storm that we had with all the trees down and everything? It seems like that was a million years ago, but that was about 3 weeks ago. Had someone write just the sweetest note about how quickly Bubba got that tree taken care of, got it hauled off, got their power restored, and they were so thankful for that. So shout out to our folks at BP&L. Police Officer Alvarado got a note from a person who said he passed them, saw they were changing a tire, stopped, helped them change the tire, realized they didn't have one of the tools they needed, went to the police department, got the tool, came back, helped the person change the tire. And the person was just like, oh my gosh, just so very thankful. So a shout out to Officer Alvarado. And then the fire department, during that same storm, we've got some critical care homebound folks that we check on, and our fire department provided a generator to someone who was homebound on an oxygen machine that called in because their power backup wasn't working, and the fire department brought them a generator until their power was restored to make sure that their oxygen machine could be working. So those are the kind of things that the men and women that work at the City of Bastrop do every day, and sometimes people never know about it. And when folks take the time to send an email, I just wanted to share that with you guys. I'm really, really proud of the folks that we're able to work with. Okay, Colin, let's go to the next page. This report, it was only from June 7th to June 16th, and we had a council meeting in the middle there, so I don't have a whole lot of pictures, but I did want to share that I had so much fun. The Texas Nonprofit Theaters, they were in town a couple weekends ago, and I am one of the co-hosts for the Heart of Bastrop talk show that gets we did season 2. We did 10 episodes for both seasons. We're on a summer hiatus right now. But Dennis Zalis was with Texas Nonprofit Theaters. They brought 250 students from across the state, and for $5 you could go see their play presentations at the Opera House. And those kids stayed here in Bastrop. A lot of them talked about wanting to bring their families back because there were so many fun things to do. So it was really neat to get to visit with him. And I also wanted to remind everyone that the summer library program is called Tales and Tales. Get it? Because it's library. That registration is open now, and I was at the library board meeting on June 7th. And I also wanted to send out a congratulations to the Smithville Chamber. Some of you may remember a little over a year ago, they had an arsonist burn down the chamber building in Smithville, and they had their open house. And that was another thing that I did during the week, was go down there, and it's just nice to support our neighbors. Okay, Colin, you can go to the next page. All right, I talked about the Heart of Bastrop filming that I do, and we are on a summer hiatus, but last week I did we filmed The Corvette Invasion is Coming. It's coming in July. It's the weekend of the 18th. The Wienermobile is coming back. It's going to be a great time. They are completely booked out. There'll be 350 Corvettes. If you're a Corvette person, you know that they have C7s and C8s, and the 8s just came out, and they're a mid-engine whatever. They're saying there's going to be 8 of those, and a lot of people have never even seen the C8. So if you have any interest in Corvettes, I know a few folks sitting on this dais that are definitely going to be there. That'll be over at the convention center. And they also talked about an Astrovet, which was interesting to me because I was raised in the Clear Lake City area. But one of the things, this is really smart marketing. The astronauts were given a Corvette, and they leased the Corvette for 1 year for $1. And when the year was over, they gave the Corvette back, and that became known as an Astrovet. And so there are very few of them, and there's a person that's going to have an Astrovet, and it'll be at the convention center, so you can ask them all kinds of geeky questions about that if you would like. Some of you know I have a 57 Chevy, and we went out to the Silver Pines Nursing Home. Mr. Gartman, I see in the audience, several of us, I think we came up with 18 cars, and it was really fun. The folks that were able to come out, and their eyes just light up, and they start telling you stories about when they remember driving a car like that, and that was a really fun day. We've already talked about Juneteenth. I hope everyone had a good Father's Day. Mayor Pro Tem Nelson, Councilmember Jackson, our attorney, Mr. Borquez, and myself were all at the TML legislative wrap-up. I saw earlier today that the special session has already been called for July 8th, but they haven't said what the agenda item's going to be. But we got about an inch worth of documentation of all the things we need to do to make sure that we remain compliant. So we've got the city manager and I are already talking about some of the things that we need to do to stay compliant. And I was at a BDC board meeting last night. Moving forward, there's one thing I didn't put on here. June 26th, and we're going to talk about parks more a little bit later in the meeting, but the Bird Sit, that is the fourth Saturday, I guess, fourth Saturday, is this Saturday from 8:30 to 11 at Fisherman's Park. So it's a really fun time. I've been asked to serve on the ERCOT advisory board, so I'm looking forward to that. And if you are an early riser, please join us at the K-View Daybreak at 5 a.m. on Friday, July 2nd. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Nelson, there is a 5 that's in the morning as well. The Bastrop Patriotic Festival, I know the Chamber's looking for some volunteers, and council, you'll make note that on July 12th, we have a joint meeting with the BEDC, and I know that's on everyone's calendar. Yesterday, it was my privilege to spend some few hours with Mayor Pro Tem Nelson because it was his birthday. So let's have a round of applause for Mayor Pro Tem Nelson. Council, living another year. Council never resists the urge to give each other a hard time about getting a year older and wiser. With that, council, I say we let the birthday boy go first. Mayor Pro Tem Nelson, what have you got for us this evening?
Madam Mayor, you stole all my thunder. I have nothing to report.
Sorry, didn't mean to do that. Councilmember Rogers?
I have nothing this week.
Thank you for all your hard work for summer in the city. I know Main Street
I
really.
was sweating at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, it was
Seemed like a
something
lot of
else.
work for 30 minutes, but it was a hot sweat.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. I've just got one item in particular. It's a very important item. I just want the council and the public to know that I've already visited with the city manager and his staff about doing something to commemorate an Army soldier, which was Corporal Julius Thomas, that for my recollection, he was the first veteran from Bastrop that died in Vietnam, and especially the first black veteran that died in Vietnam. So we'd like to come up with something to show him our appreciation for his service, because he was only in the service about 9 months before he got killed. So I'd like to see something done in his honor in the city of Bastrop.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Mr. Peterson. Councilmember?
By the way, excuse me.
I'm sorry.
That was brought to my attention by former Mayor Ken Kessler, and I want to thank him for bringing that to our attention, because something should have been done about this years and years ago.
Well, we are going to take care of it. I know city manager shared with me a few weeks ago that you had asked about that, and I think staff's come up with some pretty good ideas.
Outstanding.
It'll
Thank
be
you.
fun to announce that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Crouch?
I guess mine are from a couple of weeks ago, since we didn't get to really finish our meeting last time. So a couple of things is just I've been looking at options for available land for new playing fields for the kids, soccer fields and baseball fields, and trying to work with different groups to get information on that. I've been asked to gather information on a non-train horn blowing area through the city, which I think has been started before, but given up. Maybe it was too hard to do that, but I'm going to look into that again. I went with Councilman Jackson and Tom Scott to look at the Kerr Center and some possible repairs and some donations to make those repairs to that building. We met with planning and zoning and discussed the permitting and planning sequences that we have here, and then Paul was going to put together a workshop for all the builders and developers and individuals for, I think the tentative date is June 30th over at the Convention Center, so everybody can kind of have some input on the permitting process here in town. And then what was next here? A couple of things with Fairview Cemetery. One item was about a lot that recently sold on the front of it, to see if we can do something to keep that lot from being built on or not, or buy back, so that the front of the cemetery is kept clean from commercial real estate, and some erosion control at the top of that cemetery. And then one thing I emailed you about today was trying to establish a sister city through Sister City International, where Bastrop would not own a sister city, but participate with a sister city in Europe somewhere that has some relationship to Bastrop, and then share people, ideas, and things with each other throughout the year. So I thought that was a pretty good idea that someone had come up with, and apparently it may have been thought of before, but see if we can participate in something like that again. And that's it.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Crouch. Councilmember Jackson?
You both kind of mentioned a few things that I was going to mention, but I'll just kind of briefly go back over some of those things. The cemetery situation was brought to my attention. As you know, last year, I guess it was, we had an opportunity to buy a piece of property at the Fairview Cemetery to complete our ownership of Highway 95 frontage to the cemetery at Fairview, and we opted out of doing that. And that piece is now sold, but I understand that it may be available for sale if we are so inclined to purchase it. So I'm hoping that that'll be something we'll reconsider. As you mentioned, the TML legislative wrap-up session was very interesting. We got a chance to go through all the bills that were passed and bills that didn't pass and things that we need to be, as cities, be aware of that are coming toward us maybe through the special session that's coming up. And as the mayor mentioned, the first of many special sessions has been announced, and so there are a lot of bills that were very harmful to cities that were passed and a lot of other things that are coming our way, so we need to be aware of that. The Parks Board met a few weeks ago, and you're going to see a little bit more about what happened at the Parks Board meeting tonight, so it's on the agenda, and that's something I'm very proud and excited about that we're going to talk about later on. Last thing, although Juneteenth is over, the PBS is still running their special called Juneteenth Jamboree. It goes through this week, and it shows what happened to the slaves after Juneteenth and how the freedom colonies were established. And it mentions the freedom colonies in Bastrop. And so it's something that I think some of you, I mentioned earlier, some of you might be interested in trying to find out. If you go to PBS or KLRU, KLRN, they'll have the dates and the times that are there. If not, I can get you a link for it too. And that's all I have at this time.
Thank you, Councilmember Jackson. We're moving on to item 4C, City Manager's Report. Mr. Hoffman?
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the comments about last Saturday. It really was a special opportunity to work with the folks with the Juneteenth Committee and thank them very much for allowing us to share the day with them. As most people know, maybe not everybody listening knows that we had anticipated a Summer in the City downtown and Main Street event for June the 5th. Concerns about the weather caused us to reschedule that to June 19th. We asked the Juneteenth committee if they would mind sharing that day with us, and they readily said yes and commented about that very nicely on Saturday. It was a great celebration. A lot of city employees worked to pull it off and to change gears at the last minute. A lot of folks with the Juneteenth Committee. Thanks especially to Assistant City Manager Rebecca Gleason for pulling all of that together. Public Works Director Curtis Hancock and his team worked awfully hard. Police Chief Clint Nagy, Fire Chief Andreas Rosales and their teams, BP&L Director Curtis Irvin and his team. The Touch-a-Truck event was a big hit. We're running through some photographs of it now. A lot of vendors. I think it was a good day for the businesses along Main Street. The music was just terrific. As the mayor indicated, it was a long day, and it was spread out over a large area. We've already started the debriefing on how we might improve on some things next year. We probably can't make it cooler, but we can perhaps shorten parts of the day and orient ourselves better towards finding shade. That's just some of the feedback we've received so far, but I really do appreciate the opportunity to work on the event and looking forward to next year. The mayor mentioned this. but I'll repeat it just real quickly and maybe add just a little bit of detail. And council, this should be on your calendar already. On July the 12th, we'll have a joint meeting with the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation. The BEDC staff and Mr. Job and I have been working on an agenda for that day. Been keeping the mayor apprised of all of that. At yesterday's BEDC meeting, they discussed their approach to the meeting as well. And council, I may have mentioned this already in a weekly memo, but what we hope to do that day is start the discussion with a pretty broad overview about what the BEDC is all about and what state law says about roles and responsibilities for both the corporation and the city council. We think that's an important reminder and update. And then we also need to have a big picture and long-range discussion about the city of Bastrop's strategic objectives and BEDC's. And the whole idea is that that conversation culminates in some areas of common ground where we can come to alignment and consensus on short-term what it is we're all trying to accomplish. We've got an industrial park we're trying to develop, and we've got some capital projects identified there. We've got other capital projects that we might jointly participate in as well. And then there will be some next steps as we go through the budget process. I'm looking forward to it and think we're going to get a lot out of the day. Actually, not day. That meeting will start at 5 o'clock on the 12th. We'll be in this room, and we'll try to get you out of there around 8:30 is our plan. And then the next day, and this is our next council meeting, June is one of those 5 Tuesday months, so we're 3 weeks away from your next council meeting. We've got a pretty heavy agenda, but I think most of these things are familiar to you. You've been hearing updates from our financial advisor and Ms. Waldron about our plan to issue COs, and that's primarily to fund the wastewater plant and the water plant. But there's also $700,000 in there for a fence replacement project at Hunter's Crossing. We annually enter into an agreement with the county for their provision of telecommunications service, and the fire chief, police chief, and I have been working on that in discussion with the county judge, and we're bringing that agreement to council on July the 13th. Annually, around this time of the year, we look at the rules of procedure, and we'll present a draft to you of amendments. May not be ready to vote on July 13th, and if not, that'll be fine. The BEDC's been working for a long time on the River Loop project. They did open bids, and as I understand, that went well, and we'll ask council to award that important contract on the 13th. We've been working for months on updating the employee handbook. I think we're finally ready to present that for council's consideration on the 13th. Like I said, there's a lot of things on the July 13th agenda. In fact, I've got 2 slides on it. Ms. Waldron's been working on a fairly straightforward budget amendment for July the 13th, a mid-year budget amendment. Another significant item that had been scheduled earlier, and we decided to put this on to the July 13th agenda. The FEMA maps have been significantly updated. This does impact property owners in the Piney Creek area and in the Gills Branch watershed area. It's important that we do a good job of getting information out to folks about how they can find out how that impacts them. We've been answering those kinds of questions on a one-by-one basis. We do plan to do some more comprehensive public messaging on that, but we need to make sure council knows what that's all about, where we are, and we'll probably need to get some council feedback as we proceed on with floodplain administration, and so I'm looking forward to that discussion. We'll be recognizing Bastrop ISD partners, and the mayor has made some board appointments that need to be confirmed by the council, and I think that's it. Thank you, council.
Okay, so we're moving on to item 4D. If you are on the Parks Board, Barbara, I'm looking at you, or if you work for the recreation program, come on, Ms. Fossler, and I see some Parks folks in the back too. If you are involved in our Parks and Recreation, if you're a master gardener, Sunday I'm looking at you, but I know you probably won't come up here. I would love for you to come join us for this proclamation. And one of the things that I wanted to share, some people don't realize that the pool is open at the state park, and the state park's managing that pool. And if you are a member of Bastrop Recreation Program, you can get a discount when you visit that pool. And I know that as of 2 hours ago, we are at 220 members on our recreation program that has only started just a couple months ago, and we're moving into the next phases. And I know that is really exciting for everyone. I also want to give a shout out to Councilmember Jackson, who made the suggestion that we go ahead and recognize Parks and Recreation Month. It's something, I think it says it in here. It was only started a few years ago across the nation, and Councilmember Jackson brought that to the Parks Board attention and asked for the proclamation. Whereas parks and recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including the city of Bastrop, whereas our parks and recreations are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens, and contributing to the economic, environmental well-being of community and region, parks and recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for those who are mentally or physically disabled, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. Parks and recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. Parks and recreation areas are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community. Parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce habitat for wildlife. Our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. This is just making your heart happy, isn't it? The U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month. The City of Bastrop recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources. Now, therefore, I, Connie Schrader, Mayor of the City of Bastrop, do hereby proclaim the month of July as Parks and Recreation Month. Here you go. Pretend we like each other. So not pretend. There we go.
Yes, Judy. Yeah, Jimmy is our past chair, so that one should get involved as well.
All right. Thank you, guys. Council, I'm going to beg your indulgence. You know, I always read that part at the beginning about realigning the agenda, and we know how hard Curtis Hancock and his crew worked this weekend, and I would like to go ahead and take F, G, and H. I think they will go quite quickly, and Mr. Hancock has permission to go home as soon as we've done those items. So, Colin, we are going to be moving to item 9F. 9F is on about the middle of the page, on page 4. Consider action to approve resolution number R 2021-59 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, accepting donation from the Lost Pines Alliance Golf Club for 18 disc golf baskets to be installed in Bob Bryant Park, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents, providing for a repealing clause, and establishing an effective date. Mr. Hancock.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, City Manager. Tonight we do have 3 items on the agenda, and they all about donations for our parks. Bob Bryant Park, a group had come to us and wanting to bring disc golf into Bob Bryant Park. And it started out with just a husband and wife, and he called and invited me over to meet with him and his 3 girls. And they're really very well mannered. They're excellent kids, and they're state champions, national champions. And one of his daughters this last weekend just won the professional state national tournament, which is like the Super Bowl of disc golf. So, and they live here in Bastrop, and they want to get more people involved and help the community. This is an area in Bob Bryant. You can see the lines of how the disc golf would lay out. And what they're wanting to do is they're going to provide all the engineering for it to lay it out, and a professional that does that. And then we'll have a work day, and from the work day, they will get baskets, temporary baskets, to hold a tournament to raise the funds to buy the baskets for permanent baskets, and that's what we're here for.
All right, I'm assuming this side of the council dais is going to jump for a motion, so does anybody have any questions for Mr. Hancock? Happy to entertain a motion.
I'll be glad to make a motion that we go forward with this action.
I have a motion from Councilmember Jackson that we approve
Second.
Resolution Number 2021-59 and a second from Councilmember Crouch. Any further discussion?
Just briefly, what I was intending to say earlier was the fact that since July is Parks and Recreation Month, there are going to be a number of activities, including things with the disc golfs that are going on throughout the city. And you'll hear more about that, I suppose, later on from Parks and Recreation. But the Parks Department's planning lots of activities and cooperative things, anything dealing with Parks and Recreation. July will be the month that you'll hear about it.
Any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Jackson,
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, council. We'll be moving to the next item, 9G. Consider action to approve Resolution Number R 2021-60 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, accepting donation from the Audubon Association for 3 Purple Mountain houses to be placed in Bob Bryant Park, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents, providing for a repealing clause, and establishing an effective date. Mr. Hancock.
Again, this is just another donation, and they're awful nice to donate the 3 Purple Martin houses, and we're just asking for y'all's permission to carry on.
Any questions for Mr. Hancock?
I move to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Rogers.
Second.
I have a second from Mayor Pro Tem Nelson. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Rogers,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson,
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion passes unanimously. We're moving on to item 9H, consider action to approve Resolution Number R 2021-61 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, accepting donation from Bird City Coalition that received a grant for $1,990 from Texas Parks and Wildlife for birding blinds to be installed in Bob Bryant Park. There's going to be a lot going on in Bob Bryant Park. Authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents, providing for a repealing clause, and establishing an effective date. Mr. Hancock.
Yeah, I suspect I'll get a few questions of birding blind. I do have some examples here for y'all to see.
It's not really blind birds, just so that we're all clear.
Right,
All right.
right. It's just an area where the people can sit and kind of be hidden from the birds, similar to a deer stand, except for it's not all sided. That way anybody can get access to it.
And no one will be shooting out of it.
No
That's
shooting.
a real important other
Yeah,
detail.
no
That was
shooting.
my
All right.
question. Nobody
No
can
shooting,
shoot back
just,
There we go. Any questions for Mr. Hancock?
I did have a question on that last picture. See, it's got the, I guess that's like a little, no, go back where you were. Go back. Nobody asked you to change the picture. No, go forward. Yes.
Go the other way.
There you go,
There.
stop. Well, do you think it'll have like that, is that like a binocular thing? You think
Yeah,
that'll be
that-
kind of cool?
at that one, these are just examples
I know,
that
I was just
pulled
wondering
off.
if you thought it might, in that
Yeah.
grant.
But that's, most of the time, all the birders have their own binoculars and they.
The
walk
birds
in.
have the binoculars?
Yes,
Birders.
the
Oh,
birders. Believe me, birders.
Just making sure.
You need to go to the big bird sit on Saturday. You're going to find out all
All right,
about it.
thank you.
Any other questions, council?
I move to approve.
I have a motion to approve from
For
Councilmember
binoculars.
Rogers.
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Peterson. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson,
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion passes unanimously. Mr. Hancock promised me you will go home. Thank you, board members from the Parks Board, for coming out. And the
Curtis.
July events for Parks and Recreation, I'm sure that Colin and Rebecca will get all of those items posted for you. Council, one of the other things that we try to do to be respectful of taxpayer dollars is to make sure that whenever we have consultants in the audience that we move to them. So we are going to be going to item 9D at the bottom of page 3. Mayor Pro Tem Nelson, I believe you're going to recuse yourself on this item.
That's correct, Madam Mayor.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem Nelson owns property. His house is in Hunter's Crossing, and so that's why he's recusing himself. So we are on item 9D, hold public hearing on the Hunters Crossing Public Improvement District ongoing service plan and proposed assessment levy. Consider any objections to the proposed assessments and consider action to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2021-08 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving the 2021 service plan update, including provisions related to assessments for Hunters Crossing's Public Improvement District, approving a fiscal year 2022 assessment roll for the district, and containing other provisions related to the Hunters Crossing Public Improvement District and the Hunters Crossing Local Government Corporation, providing for an effective date and move to include on the July 13th, 2021 City Council meeting for the second reading. Ms. Waldron.
It's a mouthful, I know, I'm sorry. Yes, so just a quick overview. Annual review of the plan is required by law. We do it each year. The local government corporation for the Hunters Crossing Public Improvement District has been since January and talking about important operation and maintenance issues in the district. One of the issues that we have talked about publicly before, and we held an open house out at the district April 24th, had quite a few residents come and voice their concerns and voice their support on the fence replacement project. And so we've come to council. Council has nodded that an issuance of certificate of obligation for this type of replacement sounds like a good idea. And so this plan includes budgeted operation and maintenance increasing the operation and maintenance to cover very specific items that will need attention over the years, and that is including the fence replacement and the debt service that will come with that project. This plan includes some increases. Residential is increasing by $12 annually on top of what they were already paying for their operation and maintenance fees, and the commercial and multifamily, they pay by a per square footage, and so that increases 0.0133 increase per square footage. I do have our consultant with P3 Works Consulting here, John Snyder. He prepared the update for the service plan, and so he is going to come up here if y'all have any questions for him.
Good evening.
Good evening. John Snyder with P3 Works. We're the city's bid administrator. Really, Tracy did a great job. That was a great summary. I'm happy to answer any questions. But overall, this is really just an update from the amended and restated SAP update that y'all did in 2019. And so on the capital assessments, nothing's changing. We're just going with those payment schedules that were outlined in the 2019 SAP. And everything's been updated. There's full schedules in the SAP update, so if any property owner wants to see what they're going to pay on a yearly basis, it's in here for both residential and commercial. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Council, do you have any questions for the consultant? And Mr. City Manager, I don't know whether you or the consultant want to answer this. Just for clarity, and I know Tracy kind of went over this, but although the certificates of obligation will be funding that is separate from any tax dollars, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure, you're right. It is separate from tax dollars. It's not a tax. It is an assessment. It was created about 20 years ago at the beginning of the development of the Hunters Crossing subdivision, primarily as a way to reimburse the developer for the cost of infrastructure. And that is what that capital assessment is about. But it is not a tax. It's an assessment on property owners that's apportioned relative to the cost of the capital and the O&M. The fence replacement isn't being financed through the capital side of the assessment. It's being completely funded through the operations and maintenance part. This comes to the council with a positive recommendation from the Hunters Crossing board, the board of directors that's required by state law to govern a local government corporation.
The angle I was really going at is if you are a citizen in the city of Bastrop, your taxes are not going towards the fence.
It is completely assessed on the property owners, the commercial and the residential property owners in the district.
Excellent. All right, I'm going to, if we don't have any questions for the consultant, I'm going to officially open the public hearing. And Madam Secretary, did we have anyone signed up to speak for the public hearing?
No, Mayor.
All right, I have one person who signed up for citizen comments. It is Laura Townsend. They wish to speak in favor, and their comment makes me think that it is about Hunters Crossing, so I want to read that at this time. Walking trails in the Hunters Crossing neighborhood would benefit from additional safety lighting, such as solar powered, to provide an element of safety for evening walkers that is currently lacking. And she lives at 208 Packhorse Drive, and I believe it was while we're looking at assessment things, that was a suggestion from a resident. So if there is no one else to speak at the public hearing, I'm officially closing the public hearing. And council, I am, if there are no questions, I am happy to entertain a motion for the approval of ordinance 2021-08.
Mayor, first I'd like to let you know that I do sit on the Hunters Crossing PID board, so I abstained from that vote when they voted on this because I do also sit on the council. So I would like to move to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Rogers and a second from Councilmember Peterson. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Rogers?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch?
Yes.
The motion passes, that was everyone, right? Motion passes unanimously with a 4-0 vote and 1 abstaining. Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Have a safe evening on your way home. Ms. Waldron, while you're up here, do you want to do 6A? Receive presentation to the unaudited monthly financial report for the period ending May 31st, 2021.
All right, so this is the May report, general fund. Wanted to touch on some highlights and not just some negatives. Wanted to report on good things that are happening in revenue. Our sales tax is really kind of off the charts right now as far as our forecast and our budget. 18% positive over forecast, and the development fees are about $689,000 over where we budgeted year to date this year. And that just speaks to how much development and how busy our planning department is right now. As far as some shortfalls, we do have a few funds, which we've talked about every month. The HOT fund, that percentage below forecast does get smaller each month.
Okay.
I think when I changed it to 31, it had been 35. So we're, it's slowly getting there. And I think that the industry, hotels are opening back up. Tourism is happening a lot more now than it was. So I think we'll continue to see that gap close. Capital funds, little low. Interest revenue, same thing each month. On the expense side, everything is performing positive to forecast. So that side looks good.
Good job. Thank you, Ms. Waldron. Council, any questions for Ms. Waldron? A testimony to shopping local. It does make a difference. We are enjoying good sales tax.
Apparently everybody's remodeling.
Yes, the remodeling has really taken on some major efforts. Council, I've had a couple of you ask that we make sure we take care of the items that we were not able to take care of on June 8th. So I have 2 more items. We're going to be doing 9B and 9C, and then we will go to 9E, and then we'll go back and catch up the easy stuff. I'm skipping 9A because that's going to be super fast and easy, and I think there are more folks that are interested in the scooters and the signs. So Colin, we are moving to item 9B. We're in the middle of page 3. Consider action to approve second reading of ordinance number 2021-06. And it's a different number, and Ms. Franklin explained she used a resolution number and we needed to use an ordinance number, so the correction has been made. And since we're doing this as the second reading, it is officially ordinance 2021-06 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, amending Chapter 12, Traffic and Vehicles, to adopt 12.14 motor-assisted scooters, electric bikes, bicycles, and bicycles equipped with GPS, and providing for findings of fact, adoption, repealer, severability, and enforcement, establishing an effective date, and proper notice and meeting. Chief Nagy.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager. Tonight, I'm pleased to present the follow-up and the update to our motor-assisted scooters, electric bicycles, and bicycles equipped with GPS ordinance. One of the major updates we made is we have now the ability to have a pilot program. It is important to note that this pilot program is completely within the confines of the ordinance that I'm showing you tonight. But what that does is just gives us a little bit of a small scale study to make sure that the ordinance is working for us as best as possible. Because what I don't want to have happen is what's happened to other cities where they're having to go back and amend their ordinances. So this will just give us a little flexibility within that ordinance. This is just an example. So one of the concerns was how many of these dockless vehicles are we going to have in the city? So example, we could have 40 scooters and 20 e-bikes in this particular pilot program. And also we determined there are 3 at least initial staging areas within the central business area. And then we've determined that no more 20 dockless vehicles are going to be at any particular location in a particular time. Here's the areas that we've identified. So the 700 block of Spring Street, this is going to just be around that mobility hub. Then we also have the Lost Pines Art Center. And then lastly, Water and Pine Street, and that's going to be adjacent to Main Street, of course, and then behind the Art Center. There was also a concern about these scooters being thrown in waterways or other undesirable areas in the area. So we've kind of updated that. I wanted to make sure that the permit holders have the ability to use geofencing to prohibit and then also locate vehicles that might make it into those areas. They will have a 1-hour response time to pick those vehicles up. We also determined that a willingness by that company to cooperate with any criminal mischief or any criminal investigations would help a lot. And then we actually gave a 75-foot buffer from the Colorado River, and that will also help prohibit some of that. And that is it. Do you have any questions?
Chief Nagy, I noted that in the revision, I thought it was really great that you added it was momentarily. So if they want to stop and look at the river, that's fine.
Yes,
you can't
absolutely.
leave it parked by the river.
Yes.
So I was glad we didn't have to get into the, I just wanted to take a picture.
Yeah, no,
so
that
was
won't
a
happen.
good
We're good to
revision.
go.
Council, any questions for Chief Nagy? Councilmember Crouch?
No, I think you did a really good job of incorporating all the questions that we had on the last round, so
Yes, sir. And I know you also had some
job on
questions about persons maybe using those in residential areas. And I really did look over our nuisances, and those nuisances will definitely cover those concerns you had earlier. Forgot to bring that up.
I'm not sure who was first, so I'm going to let birthday boy go. Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Yeah, when I was in Austin yesterday, they were almost tripped over one of the little scooters because it was in a place where it should not have been, and you addressed that in your presentation. I really appreciate that because I almost tripped over, and that, the mayor would have laughed and laughed. And laughed.
There would have been
Absolutely.
pictures. There would
Thank
have
you.
been
Yes.
pictures. Councilmember Rogers?
I want to thank you again for adding all the things that we went over.
Okay.
I did notice that they can't be on a road that's over 35 miles an hour, right?
Correct.
So that kind of puts them from, let's say, the railroad track, right? Once you go to the railroad track, didn't it turn to 40?
No, really. So if you're kind of in the downtown area, if you're going west, it will, so you'll go across the bridge. They won't be able to go across the bridge technically because there's a small 40. And as you go across the railroad tracks east, it's still 30 to about I'd say Highway 21 and 95, yes.
So that, I was just giving the public a view. They can pretty much go from the theater to the.
That's correct.
To the bridge. So it's a good area that they can ride those scooters. Okay,
That's right.
thank you.
They could walk it across the bridge and get on it again in the neighborhood, right?
They could do that, yes.
Okay. All right. If they wanted to go down the side, well, some of them aren't allowed on. I was wondering if we can get them to Bob Bryant. That's where I was going.
Yeah, I think we could. There's a little bit of logistics in, but using that geofencing, that's greatly powerful. So these companies can say, you've got to walk your scooter past this point, and basically it's just, you won't be as rideable as it is. You'll have to push it, it won't have power until to the next geo point. That would be, say, for example, at Old Austin Highway and the Loop, and that'd be that 35 mile an hour again, and they can start up again.
Excellent, excellent. All right, council, any other questions for Chief Nagy? Councilmember Crouch?
I just had a question about the new loop that I saw in the packet that goes behind the movie theater, Farm Street, down 95 frontage and then back. So that'll be a sidewalk down 95 frontage, right? So that they'll be able to access all of that as well?
Yeah, so they cannot ride on any roadway that's 35 or over, but there's some sidewalks in any particular area, they can use those sidewalks.
Okay.
The scooters can, the bikes may not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Council?
I move to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Rogers and a second from Mayor Pro Tem Nelson. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Rogers?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. The motion passes unanimously, and we now have a pilot program for scooters in the city of Bastrop. We're moving on to item 9C, consider action to approve the second reading of ordinance number 2021-07, same thing, it's a different number, but we're doing it right and it was posted correctly, of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, adopting amendments to Chapter 8 signs, including 8.1.7 non-conforming signs, 8.1.9 signs requiring a permit, 8.1.11 sign permit requirements, Article 8.2 master plans, Article 8.3 on-premise sign types and standards, and Article 8.4 temporary signs, and Chapter 10, Section 10.1.2 definitions of the Bastrop Building Block B3 Code as attached in Exhibit A, and providing for findings of fact, adoption, repeal, or severability, and enforcement, and establishing an effective date. Ms. Bills.
Good evening. So this is the second reading of the sign amendments that were last presented to you on May 25th. At that meeting, there were some additional changes that council requested to be brought back at second reading. One was references to the site triangle to make sure that that was clearly referencing them to the section of the technical manual that requires site triangle. Sidewalk sign standards, banner sign locations, and then also there was some discussion about the sign banner plaza, and I went back and did a little research on that as well to clarify that. So the first site triangle, we do have a standard for keeping site triangles in those areas when you're pulling out of a driveway or a street so you can see around the corner. I add references in several different spots within the code to make that clear as people are reading through that, get them to that section that needs to be part of the application when they turn in their sign permits. For sidewalk signs, kind of added some further clarifying in that section. One sign per property, that they must be placed near the entrance of the business by the applicant, so the person that owns or runs that business on that property is the one that needs to be applying for the sign, whatever it may say on the sign. It must be placed in the furnishing zone of the applicant's frontage line, and that's the part of their property line that is adjacent to the city's public right-of-way. And I've included that graphic in the sign code. And then also that clarifies you cannot block the walkway, which is part of that defined frontage, public frontage area. So in section 7.4.014 of the B3 code, we have this graphic, and there's an entire section that defines the public frontage area within it's that interaction between the public right-of-way and the private property. So you'll see here you have the dash line up against kind of the gray is the property line, and then you'll have the walkway in front of that, and then right before you get the curb you have what's called the furnishing zone, and that's the area, and you'll see it downtown, that's the area that we have the benches and the street lights and the trees in. So that's the proper location for your sign because that area is already not where people are having a continuous walking path. The walkway part of the sidewalk is that area that must be kept clear of obstructions, which a sign would be an obstruction. Additionally, these also will be permitted, so that's something that when someone comes in for the permit, we'll be able to discuss where the sign needs to go on their property. Banner signs was another question that needed some clarification on where banner signs could be located. So we added some additional language that allows banner signs to also, in addition to being attached to a building, to being attached securely to a fence or to yard stakes that are no more than 5 feet in height. Those still have some time limits on when those signs can be up, and they still will have to not block the side triangle. And then the last section, one of the discussions we had was about the sign banner plaza, and I went back and looked at our previous code, and that was something that kind of got accidentally deleted when we rolled certain sections forward, and it was kind of in a weird spot in the code. But this was specifically adopted to stop hanging things on the old iron bridge. It was causing damage. It was causing, I think, some other issues. And so the sign banner plaza was adopted in 2011 explicitly for creating an area that special events could hang signs. And so we have that the Main Street program permits those through the special events process. Also added, since just to be super clear, that the light pole mounted signs that are in the right of way are also governmental signs, because those are the poles that are owned and operated by the city. So the signage that goes on that is installed by the city. In this case, it's all direct messaging by the Main Street program. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a workshop on March 25th to review the first draft of the sign code before it came to City Council. And then at the I have lots of different things there. We had a workshop on the 25th. We had the actual public hearing on April 29th to recommend to City Council at the 2 meetings ago for the first reading on May 25th. The motion was 4-0 to bring back the second reading with some additional revisions. Any questions?
Good job, Ms. Bills. Councilmember Rogers?
Well, first, I want to tell you that thank you for putting up with my thorn in your side to get all that done. And I really appreciate you going through and getting all the little details I'll put, because I know that when someone goes to look at a sign, they don't go back to look at the site somewhere else. They think it's all going to be right there. So thank you very much for incorporating all of my little pains back inside there. And I also would appreciate, City Manager, if someone with the sidewalk signs, if we can get somebody personally to reach out to the ones that are out there, to reach out to the business owners that have them like on the corners and maybe inform them. It would just be nice to get a personal touch instead of finding out later.
Well, absolutely, and along with that, and I think we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, we do plan a 6-month grace period, if you will, and Jennifer and Rebecca have been putting together a public information plan, and I heard what you said about a personal touch. We'll make sure that happens, but we want to get a lot of really good information out there about these changes before we start writing citations.
Oh, and I totally agree, and Rebecca did a good job at the Main Street meeting referencing that. I just know the ones that have been doing it for a while might need a personal
Sure will.
little push. And if I have no other questions, I guess I
think
better approve it.
we've got
Go ahead.
another
Sorry.
question down here. And along those lines, for public awareness, I'd like to suggest to Assistant City Manager Gleason that maybe we ask for a spotlight moment at the chamber luncheon. They won't have one in July, but in August, because that will hit a bunch of businesses, and we can, I think that would be a worthwhile presentation, and I bet she'd give us 5 or 10 minutes. Councilmember Jackson?
I just said, first of all, I'm glad to see that you addressed most of the things that we were talking about. In fact, all of them, and you did a lot of things. There was just one thing that, in looking at what you were reading tonight about the sidewalk signs, and it says 1 sign per property. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, for those properties that have multiple businesses, are they going to have to coordinate together and put on one of those signs? Or because, like the Mercantile and some other places, there are multiple businesses in there. Not that they'll be putting out signs, but you never know. So I just wanted to make sure before we limit 1 sign per property that we've thought that through and see if that might be an issue.
That is 1 per property, yes. That was, from the feedback we got last time, that was the direction I think we've gotten, was to do 1 per property. It's 1 per property.
Right, I mean, I know it's 1 per property. I'm just saying, with the reality of the fact that some of these properties have multiple shops within the building, and that I see it might be somewhat of a problem, it might be problematic. And, but if, you know, if you think it's going to be okay, or if the council feels that that's going to be okay.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes, Mayor. In that particular circumstances, I think each business in there can use the same sign. They just have to share.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Just an overall comment. I think that what we've done with the signs since we adopted the B3 codes, I think is indicative of the life of our B3 codes and the ability to change when we see things need to be changed. And I really appreciate it. Echo Councilmember Rogers' points about it. I really appreciate your efforts on this. And with that, I move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion to approve from Mayor Pro Tem Nelson and a second from Councilmember Rogers. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. The motion passes unanimously, and we now have a new ordinance on signs. Council, we're moving to the top of page 4, item 9E, consider action to approve resolution number R 2021-57 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving a development agreement between the City of Bastrop, a home rule city, and Bastrop Colorado Bend LLC, Bastrop 552, a Texas limited liability company for 546.364 plus or minus acres of land out of the A2 Stephen F. Austin to the west of Lovers Lane, located within the City of Bastrop extraterritorial jurisdiction, is attached in Exhibit A, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents, providing for a repealing clause, and establishing an effective date. Mr. Joe.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We've been over this a few times, so I won't take a lot of your time, but I will speak a little bit about this for the folks that are watching for the first time. It's a 546.3 development. Mixed use, all related to one single user, which is the film industry. You can see it has recreation, studios, accommodations, and then some hybrid, which is a little bit of both. This is the updated concept plan. You'll see that in your packet as well. This is the updated land use plan, right? Some great things about this location and what led staff to a positive recommendation is we know it has limited connectivity. We knew that quite a bit of it was in the 100-year floodplain. We knew that one single use versus individual homes could decrease the total traffic impact on the area. Again, they've requested voluntary annexation, which will allow us to be subject to full city regulations, taxing authority. We will be extending the city services to a low-impact use. I think there's approximately about 350 LUEs. And then it has abundant open space and low impact on the riparian areas along the river. The primary access will be taken off a perimeter road. The outdoor lighting standards are consistent with city standards. That exception should not be in there. We took that out, actually. Sorry, it's the old PowerPoint. The drainage improvements are required, which was addressed at the last meeting, and then the improvements to Lovers Lane will be addressed in the traffic impact analysis. Again, at the last meeting, 3 main issues came up, and we've addressed those in certain sections, which I've highlighted in the staff report. Section 4.03, where we actually added language for the public frontage plan. That's where we'll come and talk about the roads, the landscaping, the sidewalks, all of that good stuff that's in the public realm. In section 4.05, we actually stated in there that the land use cannot have a helipad, so we took care of the helicopter concern. At 4.09, that section actually speaks about having the lighting is taken care of and it's regulated to city standards. And then last was the open space, that the owner makes a reasonable effort to preserve and protect as many trees as possible. So all the concerns that were brought up at the last meeting, we've addressed, I think, in here. You've seen the updated exhibits. With that, I'll take any questions. I knew there was a little concern about this bump out. We had some conversations about that. It's actually additional right-of-way. It's a little more than we need for the road, but that does allow for a nice, could be a possible bench, could be a possible sitting area, could be a possible bus station. But what it is, excess right-of-way that the developer didn't need, and that we needed to make that turn for the perimeter roadway.
So, Mr. Job, on that, if you'll maybe go back to that picture specifically, when I looked at the blow-up of that, the main thing that does is make it clear where the perimeter road is and keeps people from using Margie's Way.
That's correct.
Is that correct? That's my understanding of why that's done.
That is correct. It is parallel to Margie's Way.
Okay.
Tied into Margie's Way. Another good point I think worth mentioning as we go through the next steps is the update for the comprehensive plan. This is how many times you'll get to see this or something related to this again. As a total, if we were to run this concurrently, I would imagine council will see this at least another 3 times. The comprehensive plan update and the future land use map, transportation, again, will go to P&Z and council, 2 readings at council. The annexation also will come to city council, 2 readings there. The zoning will also come to city council with the public notice, and the public frontage plan will be part of that. In that current section, that will also be 2 readings. And then you'll see it one more time when it comes back to negotiate the agreement for any kind of incentives that they may request. I'll also say that if this is annexed in phases, along because it's planned to be built in phases, you'll actually see it quite a bit more, right? So if it's not run concurrently, it's not done at one time, you may see it up to 4 or 5 times come back.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
And just for clarity, all costs and fees associated with the planning and the permitting process are going to be borne by the developer, correct? The city's not incurring any costs in moving this process forward.
That is correct. Even if this was not approved prior to starting this, there was a professional service agreement that was signed that allows us to recoup any cost if they decide not to build or ever develop. The city's costs are still covered.
Thank you.
I think you have 1 or 2 more slides. Or are you done?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Well, again, again, this is just the staff process. Where once they complete every council meeting, you will get another chance at it. One more time, you can see it, the public improvement plan agreement. That'll come back to council. And then P&Z will see this one more time for final plat. So again, you're going to get multiple chances at this development as they move forward. This is just a copy of the master transportation plan that we showed at the last meeting. We are going from this to that. With that, I'll take any questions. Sorry.
Councilmember Rogers?
And I just want to be clear that if we go ahead with this and we annex that piece of property, no other property around it gets annexed in.
That's correct. Annexation has to be voluntary.
Okay, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that.
Yes, because several folks, thank you, Councilmember Rogers, because back in what some people would call good old days, some people would call bad old days, cities would annex, and when they annexed, then their ETJ went out and they could annex again. We have no annexation power, so it is voluntary annexation, and as a single property owner, what the staff has negotiated is that part of the deal is they are voluntarily coming into the annexation. When that puts them in the city council, and Assistant City Manager Job, correct me if I'm wrong, but that means for the folks who live in the county that are next to this piece of property, their impact to their life is going to be the same as if you were in a historic home on Pecan Park. Pecan Park or on Pecan Street, because they are going to comply with the noise ordinance, which will be the same for anyone in the city, and they are complying with the light ordinance, and they will be paying city taxes like everybody else is paying city taxes.
Correct. That's an excellent point. Pecan Park is actually located, well, if I can get this to work, well, just to the north of it, sorry. Let's back that up one more time.
There you go.
I'm about to give up. So right there to the north. So it's really right across the river. Basically,
towards the top.
It is a city residential neighborhood, which is a much denser neighborhood. A lot more folks that live there. That'll actually be just as impacted, or could be just as impacted.
Councilmember Rogers?
But one of the points I wanted to make is usually when the city annexes, they annex and make a whole new line. So it's everybody from here to that line. But it won't be like that. There'll be a big gap of the people that are still in the county, and then we have a piece of property out here. Is that correct?
Correct. We will likely jump from Pecan Park, and because I'm ruining the story for the next meeting, but essentially we'll probably jump from Pecan Park, annex the river, and annex this property.
But what I'm saying is there's no other property owners that will be annexed in.
That's correct.
That is
Okay, I
correct.
just want to make sure that we're
Yes,
understanding.
no,
correct.
it's worth repeating. We are only talking about this property owner, this 546 acres.
The state legislature does allow cities to try to annex, but it has to be a vote. So either way, it's either voluntary or the people that are being
Voluntary, or
annexed
there's an election
get
of the
to-
property owners.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Council, any other questions for Mr. Job? And the applicant is here. Does anybody have anything to say, or we want to wait and hear what the citizen comments are and hear the conversation? All right. I have 7 people signed up to speak. William Johnson turned in a request to speak at 4:49 p.m. and then also filled out a thing when you got here. So I'm going to use the earlier one. Yeah, okay, thank you. But that if somebody had seen the list that went all the way to 8, that was why. So I'm just trying to keep all my numbers straight. All right, once again, we're trying to take these in the order that they were received. The first one is Michelle Brown.
I'd like to turn my 3 minutes over to Michelle Anderson. That's fine.
Okay, and the next person, and I apologize, Carrie Carwile? Carwile? Oh, sorry, does not wish to speak. And they live at 1321 Lovers Lane, and I apologize if I did not do well on their name. The city of Bastrop County, and Tahitian Village have failed their tax-paying residents. Bastrop 502 has been in the works for months, yet residents were only made aware of the first meeting a week in advance. Why so quiet about it? Maybe I would have been on board if it didn't seem so sketchy. Can I now have a business out of my home, be annexed out of Tahitian Village, not have to pay county taxes, HOA fees, and road fees? We pay for these roads, and yet they have potholes everywhere. Not only will Lovers Lane traffic be increased, but so will the roads behind us. It's already dangerous. What will this do to my house value? As a 30-year-old with severe rheumatoid disease, it's important for me to be able to walk and exercise. This will ruin my quality of life, literally. Oh, and on top of that, building a 14-foot wall. Why? So only the rich and elite can enjoy the views when they are shooting a movie, while the citizens get to look at a wall and the wildlife have nowhere to go. There are already trees along that fence. Nothing else needs to be built. I don't understand why they sent out 57 letters to the people within 200 feet. What were the results? It seems as though Bastrop City Council already made a decision on behalf of the rich. Nothing needs to go into that field until the county and city fix the roads and drainage system. I don't want to live here anymore if this is the case. I could have been looking to sell months ago, but now we will be in a construction zone. This county has failed its citizens. The next person, and I apologize that I didn't do this before. You'll note on page 2 of the agenda that for when we interact in public, that we are going to be respectful of each other. It is not the intention of the city of Bastrop to provide a public forum for the embarrassment or demeaning of any individual or group. Neither is it the intention of the council to allow a member of the public to slur the performance, honesty, and or integrity of the council as a body, or any member or members of the council individually or collectively, or members of the city staff. Accordingly, profane, insult, and threatening language directed toward the council and or any person in the council's presence will not be tolerated. We talked about it at the last council meeting that we wouldn't be applauding for or against. This is a business meeting, and we're going to act in a respectful manner, and I appreciate you. This is a city business meeting, and we're going to act respectful as a part of our project. And we will maintain decorum in the meeting, or we're going to have an opportunity, we'll have to have a break till we can get decorum back. The next person to speak is William Johnson. Mr. Johnson, if you'll give us your name and address.
Sure. William Johnson, and Della and I live at 193 Lamaloa Lane, and I'm opposed to the development. As they say, pretty much everything's been said, but not everybody's said it yet. So, but rather than getting into the details of the project, I'd like to address the larger issues. I heard that some of you have mentioned that we're not your constituents. While it may be true that we live outside of some line drawn on a map, but what is also true is that we're very much a part of the city of Bastrop. We frequent the city. We spend our money in the city. You just talked about the sales tax increase. That's part of our money. And we love the district, the distinct character and that the city of Bastrop has for now. So while we may not be able to cast ballots in city elections, we are part of the city and the community of Bastrop. We just don't have any political representation. So we have to come speak for ourselves on topics such as this to try to preserve our Bastrop way of life. I suspect that most of you did not run for office because of the huge salaries that come with these positions. I'm guessing that most of you are serving our city because you love Bastrop. We also love Bastrop, both our city and county. Most of us chose to move here to get away from places like Austin and to enjoy the quiet peacefulness of our neighborhoods and the distinct character of Bastrop. This development seeks to destroy all that. That said, our opposition to this development is not out of any hate for the development, but rather out of a love for our neighborhoods and the Bastrop way of life. There's a principle common to almost every religion and even in most secular societies on earth that says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Is that principle being followed with this development? More than 800 people do not think so. That's why they signed a petition in opposition. Would you guys like to live close to this development? Would you like having done to you what's being done to us? I suspect not. Yet some seem to think that the not in my backyard principle is perfectly okay. And they see nothing wrong in reaping the benefits of such a development to the detriment of those of us who will be directly adversely affected by it. Screwing neighbors over to make a buck just doesn't seem like the right thing to do to me. But that's just me. I'm funny that way. Speaking of doing the right thing, someone once said that character is doing the right thing even when nobody's watching. And while that is certainly true, I believe that it's oftentimes even harder to do the right thing even when everybody is watching. Each of you will be demonstrating your integrity and true character or lack thereof when you vote on this development. I submit to you that the right thing to do is a no vote. The question is, do you have the strength of character and integrity to do the right thing by voting no? I sincerely hope that you do. Please don't Austin our Bastrop. And I ask that any remaining time be given to the next speaker.
Thank you. All right, the next speaker is Michelle Anderson. Michelle, if you'll give us your name and address.
My name is Michelle Anderson, and I live at 103 Kauai Court. No, I am not your constituent. I cannot vote for you. I am, however, a descendant of the Stephen F. Austin family, the man for which these 546 acres is named. While I may be unable to vote for any one of you, it doesn't change my answer when asked, where do I live? I live in Bastrop. I don't reply that I live in the ETJ or I live in the county of Bastrop. I live in Bastrop. That said, if we choose to plat or replat in the ETJ, the city will assess a fee, which is essentially akin to taxation without representation. As such, throughout this process, we have lacked representation. We did reach out to each one of you, and I understand that you didn't reply, but we wanted you to be a part or at least experience our community, our neighbors, to see what concerns they may have with regard to this development and how it's going to impact them. Unfortunately, we didn't receive but one reply from Mr. Crouch, and thank you for your reply. To date, the bulk of the issues that we've raised have not been addressed. We continue to seek clarification on why the plat would be labeled industrial versus commercial, and what impacts that may have if this property turns over and Mr. Butler, who I don't believe is here today, decides to, default or change his mind or whatever he does. So if that, will that industrial label remain? And what are we stuck with then? We're also wondering what is the parking situation. It looks like parking has been taken out of the out of Exhibit F. So, and we don't see any parking in the plan, so where are all these cars gonna go when there's a concert? Are they gonna park on our streets? Are they gonna park somewhere else and be shuttled in? What is the plan? Lover's Lane does not appear to be on the table for any type of repair because the city's not annexing Lover's Lane. It's gonna be back on the county. So I pay county taxes, so now this is my issue. You know, what is being done to support Lover's Lane, the individuals who live on Lover's Lane, to, you know, make that street usable for everyone who needs to use it? Our other concern is the perimeter road. Right now, the perimeter road is labeled a county road. Do we know why? I talked to Mr. Hamner last night, and he assured me it should be a city road. But is it? Are we paying for that road? Another issue we had was sound. The fencing, we don't have any clear idea on exactly what the fencing is going to consist of. Is the fencing an actual wall? Is it stone pillars with iron gating in between? I know that you're limited due to the recent change in law with regard to what design can, you know, what design you can tell him he has. I don't think you can say that he has to, you know, abide by any design. But with that in mind, what are we going to do about the sound? I know you said that, you know, he has to abide by the ordinance, but that sound travels up. What are we going to do to stop that sound from traveling down the river, up the hill, throughout the community? We also wanted, I'm wondering why we would need why y'all would need a non-train horn location for a soccer field when we're trying to fight a concert venue in our neighborhood. And I know that this is the preliminary process. I hope that that continues, you know, to be the case, and you know that this process will continue and additional approvals will be required, especially with the due diligence as far as, you know, how is this $2 billion going to be realized over 10 years? When does that 10 years start? After completion in 7 years? You know, have you talked to other communities? I talked to Austin, the Austin Film Society, and it took them 21 years to earn $2 billion. And that's with all the connections you could possibly want. Over those 21 years, they've employed over 8,000 employees, and that's rotating. So, you know, I know that I'm not your constituent. I know I don't live in the city. I know I don't pay city taxes. And I shouldn't worry about whether you're going to earn money or not, but whether you earn money or not impacts me. It impacts my neighbors. This entire development impacts all of us. We can't just draw lines between our communities because we're all interconnected. When I wanted you guys to come out, I wanted you to meet Donna. Donna's home is right, you know, she lives on El Camino. Her home is right on that boundary line. And the new fence is going to be 6 inches away from her pool. You know, Kaylin's going to have to put up a fence in her backyard. We are going to incur additional expenses. So we really hope that you consider that when making your recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Jessica Zamora. Ms. Zamora, if you'll give us your name and address.
Jessica Zamora, 111 Coeli. Just like Michelle said, we did receive one reply, which was very disheartening. The one reply that we did receive was that you guys felt that it was an invitation to an execution. So I deeply apologize if that's the way that any of you guys took that. We wanted you to see and experience our community. As it is to sound concerns, do we have it in writing? Because he did not address that this evening, Mr. Job, that we have that in writing that they will comply because they wanted that taken out. With that said, Ms. Rogers had a lot of questions last time, so I found a tenured professional who is an audio engineer degreed from TCU that runs his own studio professionally, and he answered some questions. He said that He wasn't prepared to answer those questions, that he needed more explicit information about different things to be able to give you even speculative answers as it pertains to sound. Suffice it to say that the physics of sound is very complicated, and there are too many important choices or unresolved variables between my understanding your specific situation. Amphitheaters and clamshell stages typically push sound further than stages with an open design. And he said for a public project like this, he suggests that there is an acoustic architectural designer who will help manage that specific situation. As it pertains to sound exceeding 85 decibels, the sound inside the performance area, the stage, and also within the coverage area where the crowd is would almost certainly exceed 85 decibels for most modern artists at any ticketed event. Road noise from any busy street can sometimes exceed this. He goes, I have seen in the past municipalities who have butted heads with music venues over noise ordinances multiple times. I also asked him about bass and the sound waves that are produced from bass. He said the sound of frequency below 200 hertz does travel differently and can often be physically felt much further from the source than the sounds of higher frequencies. I asked him about the fence that's being proposed. He said, while a fence like this would make an impact on the long-distance travel of sounds created, I would not say, with the information provided, whether this fence could deliver these results. With the fence you described, you could expect that there still would be very audible sonic footprint on the surrounding area of and around half a mile to a mile or more. The sound could be very clear and articulated in some places and very dull in others. He said he could not adequately speculate on even this with even more information. So if we have an educated individual like this man and ourselves who have done the research, how are you guys making an educated decision on this development? I feel like the dollar signs are blinders for you guys, so I'm asking you tonight to table this project, have a town hall, to actually have a back and forth dialogue surrounding this proposal. A perfect example of this happened just 41 miles up the road in Bee Cave, Texas. So we need to really look at what they've done because they did it in a neighborly way that Mr. Alton keeps talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zamora. The last person that we have is Sunday Thompson. She does not wish to speak, but she is being recorded as being in support, and Ms. Thompson lives at 211 Margie's Way. That is all of the folks that I have signed up to speak. Mr. Jobe, do you want to answer any of the questions that we've heard from the citizens' comments? I know you can speak to Lover's Lane and the city, county, and how that works.
Sure. Yes, it will be a city road upon annexation. The traffic impact analysis that's required will actually talk about improvements for the remainder of Lover's Lane that will be in the county. To address sound, the requirement is 85 decibels at the property line, which is what is required per our ordinance, and they will be following city ordinances. There would not be a rule if they were not going to be in the city limits. The wall itself, again, is going to come back for approval. I think that's important to remember. And then again, we took out the exemption for lighting, and I think that's everything she mentioned. So, but I'm happy to take any questions still.
Also, the sound is listed because they're restricted by the ordinance.
They're restricted by the city ordinance, that's correct. Okay. It's not specifically called out in here, it's a city ordinance that you can't exceed the decimal limit.
Mayor Pro Tem
I'm
Nelson?
sorry. While Trey is there was also a question about what if this development plan doesn't happen?
Oh, yes, you're right. Sorry. I didn't have my pen when she said that. So you're absolutely right. So what happens is this reverts back to the city and it's renegotiated. So they can change the zoning. It will remain EC. But if they don't follow the concept plan, it comes back to us to renegotiate.
So to further clarify that, it is in the county. The county has no zoning requirements, zoning authority, so it has no zoning now. When it is annexed, it will be annexed under this development agreement, and for them to change the use, whether it is them or a future owner, they have to come back and renegotiate the development agreement.
That's absolutely correct.
So the city is assured if they approve this development agreement, that this is the only use that's allowed on that piece of property.
That is correct.
And like anybody else who owns property, if someone was to change their mind at a later date, they can come back and say, well, now this is what I want to do, and we would be like starting all over, and they would either get permission or not get permission to change that.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And there's also been some questions about what if it's purchased and they decide not to do anything, then it will stay exactly like it is now. They have the development agreement or how it is now.
That's correct. It could, if
Mayor
nothing
Pro Tem
happens,
Nelson?
Good.
My question is related to sound. The sound is measured at the property line, not at the initiation of that sound. Am I correct?
That's correct.
The second question is, if this was a county project, are you aware of the county having any nuisance requirements?
There are public nuisances that can be found in state law, and I'm sure that they could enforce that. I'm not aware of one for sound. It's usually for rubbish and junk and
It's
trash,
usually rats,
refuse,
right?
rats, things of that
having problems
nature.
with trash.
So to be clear, I'm not aware of any sound ordinance that they would. Maybe Mr. Attorney may know, but I do not.
So because this is a development that's going to be annexed, then they fall into the city requirements. One of our city requirements is sound nuisance requirements. Am I
That's correct.
So
Yes, sir.
greater regulation of sound by being annexed within the city.
There are absolutely more rules in the city, yes, sir. More regulation.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rogers?
I know these are just wild questions, but let's say they didn't get annexed in the city, okay? So they could still build it. Could it possibly drill a well for the water?
They would have to, they could, they would have to go to the
They could.
groundwater district and, yes,
They
make it
could.
happen.
And they could do a septic, is that correct?
It probably wouldn't be cost effective, but yes.
I'm
Yes.
just saying it's possible.
Yes, it's possible.
So they could actually, they bought the land, they could actually drill a well and get a septic and never get annexed in the city and never ask us permission for anything.
They would need permission from us to drill the well since they are in our CCN, but we could choose
But
not
that's
to
just
serve
to
them.
drill the well.
Correct. We could
They
choose
wouldn't
not to
have to
serve
be
them.
annexed in the city for that.
Correct.
That's correct.
So they could do this whole thing without us.
Yes.
I mean, wouldn't be cost effective because of
Right.
that, but I just wanted to make sure everybody realizes that they could do it without us.
That's correct.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
In doing my homework on this particular project to help me make a decision, I discovered there's about 500 homes that have been built in that area, Tahitian Village and Margie's Way and Lover's Lane and what all like that. Are you aware of any number of homes, new homes that are built that would create a scenario where TIA or traffic impact analysis would have to be conducted?
No, so the additional homes, because they were already platted long ago and they're just single-family folks building houses, they would not have that. They are causing a traffic impact, but they don't have the requirement because they're actually building in the county.
But this project, and it's a single project, is still requiring, whether or not it's required at state side, it's still going to requirement of our development codes to do a traffic impact analysis to ascertain what needs to be, what will be the impact of what should be done to mitigate that impact, correct?
We do have a traffic impact analysis required in this agreement. Our zoning code does not require one. If you follow the grid, we are removing the grid, so they have to have a traffic impact analysis.
But so it's built into the development agreement?
It's built into the agreement, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Job? Happy to entertain a motion or any questions for the applicant or the city manager.
I think it's probably more for the applicant than for you, but Mr. Job, if you can address this, the comment was made relative to parking, that parking was not part of the development agreement. Are we still ensuring that the property that's for this particular project is going to be internal to the project? Or I guess the question is it going to be parking exterior or interior?
The city itself doesn't have a parking requirement, but I'll let them answer what their parking expectations will be.
Thank you.
Our parking's all going to be on site within the project.
Madam Mayor, after careful consideration, I move that we approve this project.
I have a motion to approve from Mayor Pro Tem Nelson
Second.
and a second from Councilmember Crouch. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
There
I'm
is
sorry, I
further
was going to ask.
discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember
Okay.
Jackson, I didn't see your.
No, I just want to say, after careful consideration on all of this, I mean, because even if, as it's been stated several times by several members and audience members as well, the development can be built even if it's not in the city limits. And so therefore, if it's in the city limits, there will be more regulations, and I think that the group will be more protected with that. And that's what's kind of guiding me in my decision that I'm going to make when I vote in just a few minutes. But it's just one of those things that without zoning, that is what the county has, no zoning, so therefore all kinds of things can be developed and all kinds of things can happen. So I wanted to assure the citizens of the county that aren't our constituents, but that we still care about them and we want what's best for them. So therefore, if this does pass, there will be more regulations and more consideration for them that'll help them with this project.
Thank you, Councilmember Jackson. Councilmember Rogers, did you want to make a
I
statement?
just want to make sure that we're just passing these agreement, that as it starts to build or as the next steps, if it's stuff we don't like, we can still stop.
You will have a chance, when they bring the annexation back, we'll have a chance to review and approve the public frontage plan. The development agreement will be approved tonight, but you will have a lot more input in the future.
Okay, so we can always put a break if there's something messed up. Okay, thank you for answering.
Any further, Councilmember Crouch?
Just for the developers, there's an issue with Lover's Lane and the shape that Lover's Lane is in currently, and I know that there's a plan to maintain that and keep that in good shape as the construction goes forward. There hasn't been a whole lot, and this isn't really the place to talk about the construction piece of it, but my experiences with developing large parcels of property is that you need to have great communication with the landowners, your neighbors, and I would highly recommend that if you do go forward with this, that you have regular meetings with those homeowners, not as a gripe session, but just as a progress. This is what we're doing. This is what we're going to be doing tonight. We've built projects on the toll road where we thought that light towers in the middle of the night wouldn't have been a problem. And it turned out to be a problem to a lot of homeowners. So we had to redirect lights, and you'll run into that same scenario during the course of your construction. So just keep that in mind, that we know you're trying to be a good neighbor here, and just keep that same thought process as you're going through the construction phase of it, because that's where you're really going to make your good neighbors, is going through the construction process of this and keeping everybody happy through that process.
Thank you, Councilmember Crouch. Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. The resolution 2021-57 is approved. Council, we're going to go back to 9A, the first item for individual consideration. Consider action to approve updated City of Bastrop Council focus areas. Assistant City Manager Gleason.
Madam Mayor, City Council, City Manager, I am delighted to be before you this evening to go over the changes that y'all made during our May 14th pre-budget planning session to our 9 focus areas. As y'all remember, we did not change any of our focus areas, but we did add some details to some of the definitions to give some more information to city staff about what they should be prioritizing and making sure that our focus areas adequately reflected our priorities. So we'll go through those real fast. Communication, well, I'll read these off. There were no changes. Support and enhance open two-way communication between the city and its businesses. Community safety, no change. Keep citizens, businesses, and visitors safe. Economic vitality, no change. Create sustainability by leveraging tourism, infrastructure, renewal, and investment. Enhancing public-private partnerships, efficient planning and development process, and fostering an inclusive and diverse environment that encourages entrepreneurial ventures. Fiscal responsibility, no change. Prepare and manage budget, fiduciary responsibility. Manage growth, no change. Plan for and manage growth, development, and redevelopment to maintain Bastrop's unique feeling character. Here we have our first change on multimodal mobility, improved mobility for all modes of transportation. That was our change in red. Manage traffic congestion. We had a change to organizational excellence, organized governance, progressive operational efficiency through continuous employee and user training, employee and citizen volunteer recognition. Uniquely Bastrop, we removed parks from the last focus area and placed it here under Uniquely Bastrop because our parks are something that makes us special. Maintain and enhance our historic community feel by leveraging the unique combination of community, parks, cultural, and recreational assets that make Bastrop a special place to live and work. And lastly, unique environment. Again, parks did live here, but we moved that to Uniquely Bastrop, and we had this one focus more on nature. Continue beautification and natural areas, green spaces, and the river. The other thing I wanted to quickly discuss, you also had a lot of really great feedback about the quarterly report. So I have gone back in and the city manager and I worked to create a list of those changes. The community impact manager rewatched that twice as well. And we have a really detailed list of the requested changes. So we're meeting with the CSET team, which is again the communication and special event team, this week and added those changes to their assignment tasks for the quarterly report. So they're going to work with their directors to let us know which changes are simple that we can add this quarter or which changes are going to require some more work. I know some of the more detailed MyGov data is going to require us to work with the MyGov development team on going into the back end and writing some new programming for the pulling of reports. So we'll figure out which ones are already included in our reports in MyGov or which ones need to be written. And then I'll be able to give you that update. That way you know what to expect and when. So, any questions?
Council, any questions from Assistant City Manager Gleason? Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Just a quick comment. I really appreciate the work on this. I think one of the hallmarks of this council has been the consistency and continuation of our focus areas, which allows us to pinpoint what needs to be done. And from my perspective, it's infrastructure. And we've been very consistent in that, and so thank you for voicing it so nicely in our focus areas.
Move for approval.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Peterson.
Second.
And a second from Councilmember Rogers. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. We're going to go backwards. We only have 2 items left. Citizens' comments, item number 7. Madam Secretary, do we have anyone signed up for citizen comments?
No, Mayor.
We are done with citizen comments. Item number 8 is the consent agenda. We have 4 items on the consent agenda. Does anybody wish for an item to be removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll please read the consent agenda.
The consent agenda reads as follows. Item 8A, consider action to approve City Council minutes from the June 8th, 2021 regular meeting. Item 8B, consider action to approve resolution number R-2021-62 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop approving a public improvement plan agreement with Hunt Communities for the Colony Mud 1B, Section 4, as attached in Exhibit A, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents, providing for a repealing clause, and establishing an effective date. Item 8C, consider action to approve resolution number R-2021-63 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, to increase a general service contract with Arch Technical Services, LLC, ATS for third-party building review and inspection services in amount not to exceed $338,264.00 for fiscal year 2021, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents, providing for a repealing clause, and establishing an effective date. Item 8D, consider action to approve Resolution Number R-2021-64 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, supporting the City of Bastrop's applications for 3 transportation alternative grants as follows: the Old Iron Bridge rehabilitation, the Farm and Chestnut Loop, and the Wilson and Willow Shared Loop to the Texas Department of Transportation's 2021 Transportation Alternatives Call for Projects, providing for a repealing clause and establishing an effective date. This concludes the consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Move to approve consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion to approve from Mayor Pro Tem Nelson and a second from Councilmember Peterson.
Can I make one comment before
Absolutely,
we approve
Councilmember
that?
Crouch.
There was a typo on the year on 8C. It says 2022-1. If we just, I know you said 2021 when you read it, but it is 2021, correct?
Yes.
Okay. As long as we get that.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes. Thank you, Council. We are on the last item. Councilmember Peterson, we're on item 10.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
I have a motion to adjourn from Councilmember Peterson, a second from Councilmember Rogers. It is 8:15 and we are adjourned. Everyone be safe going home.